Chapter 1. The Child in the Desert. The twin sons of Zyra beat down relentlessly on the vast, unending desert, a shimmering expanse of molten gold stretching beyond the horizon in every direction. The heat was suffocating, the air thick with drifting sand, and the harsh scent of scorched rock. This was no ordinary desert. It was a place where legends were born and forgotten, a crucible of survival that shaped those who dared to cross it. Among the swirling dunes and jagged stone outcrops, the ancient echoes of a vanished civilization whispered through the arid winds. Beneath the blinding light and merciless sky, the landscape held secrets buried beneath layers of dust and time, secrets that Kalen, a solitary scavenger from the outer colonies, had learned to respect and fear. Kalen was not a man of great renown or fortune. His worn leather boots, sun-bleached coat, and dusty tools marked him as one of the countless wanderers eking out a living from the relics of old worlds. He had no home save the stars, no family save the memories of a childhood lost to the cold vacuum of space. He traveled alone, guided by instinct, grit, and a hardened resolve to survive the merciless frontier. Every day was a gamble, scouring ancient crash sites, forgotten ruins, and the debris fields where lost technology waited to be reclaimed. His eyes, sharp and wary, scanned the horizon constantly for danger or opportunity. He knew well the perils of the desert, deadly creatures lurking beneath the sand, sudden storms that could bury a man alive, and rival scavengers with blood on their hands. But Kalen had learned to move like a shadow, to listen to the subtle signs the desert gave, the pattern of shifting sands, the faint tracks of unseen footsteps, the way the air shimmered in the heat. On this day, the desert seemed unusually still, almost as if holding its breath. Kalen's boots sank deeply into the soft sand as he pressed onward, guided by a faint sound that did not belong to the howling wind or the distant cries of desert birds. It was a soft, irregular noise, an urgent, desperate wail that tugged at something deep inside him. He paused, listening carefully, turning his head against the wind to pinpoint the source. The cry came again, frail but unmistakable. He started walking toward it, cautious yet compelled, following the thread of sound through the barren wasteland. As he approached a weathered archway of ancient stone, half buried in the shifting dunes, the cries became clearer, a small voice, trembling and fearful. Beneath the arch, curled into a tight ball, was a child unlike any Kalen had ever seen. Her skin was a pale lavender hue, faintly iridescent, and her large, almond-shaped eyes shimmered with an otherworldly violet light. She was thin and dirty, her clothes tattered rags that fluttered in the hot breeze. Despite the exhaustion etched in her delicate features, there was a fierce spark of life in her gaze. She looked up at Kalen with a mixture of fear and hope, clutching a small pendant shaped like a twisted spiral of silver and crystalline, ancient symbol he vaguely recognized from old star charts and legends. Kalen knelt slowly, hands raised in peace, careful not to startle her. "Hey," he said softly, voice rough from years of dry air and disuse. "You're safe now. What's your name?" The child hesitated, then whispered in a strange, melodic language, her voice trembling like a fragile thread. Kalen's mind struggled to understand the alien words, but the tone was clear. She was lost, alone, and scared. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small water flask, holding it out to her. She eyed it suspiciously but took it gratefully, drinking deeply as the life-giving liquid soothed her parched throat. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the desert, Kalen knew he couldn't leave her here. The nearest settlement was a day's journey east, and rumors told of a hidden alien village nestled within the jagged cliffs beyond the dunes, an ancient refuge where descendants of a lost civilization still lived, isolated from the sprawling galactic empires. The child's pendant matched the symbols found in the ruins near that village, a clue to her origins and perhaps a key to her safety. Without hesitation, Kalen hoisted the child onto his back, securing her carefully, and began the arduous trek toward the cliffs. The desert's heat faded with the setting suns, replaced by the cold bite of night, but Kalen pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and a strange bond forming between him and the fragile alien girl. Along the way, the stars emerged in a dazzling display, constellations unfamiliar to Kalen but ancient, and sacred to the desert's native peoples. As dawn broke over the rugged horizon, the hidden village appeared an intricate network of stone dwellings carved into the sheer cliff faces, glowing faintly with bioluminescent vines and crystals. The village seemed alive, a testament to a culture that had survived countless hardships in this harsh land. Figures emerged, tall, lithe beings with lavender skin and eyes like amethyst, who approached cautiously, their expressions wary but curious. Kalen stepped forward, holding out the child's pendant as a sign of peace. The villagers gathered, speaking among themselves in a flowing, musical tongue. Then their leader appeared, a regal woman with silver hair cascading like a waterfall, eyes piercing yet kind. She looked at the child, then at Kalen, and a slow smile spread across her face. The child, still shy and trembling, clung to Kalen as the villagers welcomed them. Unbeknownst to Kalen, his act of returning the lost child was far more than a simple kindness. It was the first step in an ancient trial, a test set by the village elders to find their next chieftain, a leader strong enough to unite their people and guide them through the uncertain future. As the sun rose high, painting the village in golden light, Kalen's journey was only beginning. What lay ahead would challenge everything he believed about himself, the desert, and the fate of a forgotten race waiting for salvation. Kalen's heart pounded in his chest as the village elders slowly circled him and the child, their movements fluid and deliberate, almost ritualistic. The alien villagers, tall and graceful with skin like polished amethyst, bore an air of ancient wisdom etched into every line of their slender faces. Their eyes, large and luminous, reflected a depth of knowledge that spanned millennia. They spoke softly in their melodic tongue, words flowing like a river of music that Kalen could neither understand nor decipher, but the tone was calm, respectful, and expectant. The air buzzed with an energy he could feel deep in his bones, a silent, invisible current that seemed to bind them all in a shared destiny. The child, whose name was finally uttered by a trembling voice from one of the younger villagers, Leora, clung to Kalen as if he were her only lifeline in a world suddenly full of strangers. Her eyes, wide and shimmering with faint violet light, scanned his face as though searching for answers, for protection. Kalen felt a strange warmth flood his chest, an instinctual urge to shield her from harm, to carry the burden of her safety without question. He glanced down at the pendant dangling from a fine silver chain around her neck, a twisted spiral of ancient crystal, glowing faintly with an inner light that pulsed softly in the dim twilight. As the elders conferred quietly amongst themselves, a sudden silence fell over the gathering. The eldest among them, a tall woman named Soraya, whose silver hair seemed to ripple with the faint glow of the bioluminescent plants climbing the cliffs, stepped forward. Her gaze fixed on Kalen with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and honored. "You have crossed the desert with the lost child," she said slowly, her voice deep and resonant. The words translated for Kalen by a younger villager fluent in the galactic trade tongue. "This act is more than mercy, it is courage. And in our eyes, courage is the first sign of a leader." Kalen swallowed hard, surprised by the weight of her words. He was no leader, no warrior or nobleman, just a lone scavenger eking out a living on the fringe worlds. Yet here, in this forgotten village, a place cloaked in mystery and legend, his simple act of returning a lost child had ignited something ancient and profound. The villagers' eyes bore into him, filled with hope and expectation. Soraya continued, her voice calm but resolute. "Our people have suffered long in isolation. Threats from beyond the desert and from within our own fractured clans have left us vulnerable. We have waited for a sign, a test to find the one who will unite us, to guide us into a new era of strength and peace. Returning Leora to us, against all odds, fulfills the first of many trials. You, Kalen of the outer colonies, have passed." The ground beneath them seemed to hum with power, the ancient stones resonating in silent approval. Kalen felt a strange sensation, as if the desert itself acknowledged his presence, welcoming him into a story much larger than himself. The villagers stepped back, creating a path through the village that seemed to open for him and the child. He realized then that this was not just a village. It was a sanctuary, a cradle of an ancient civilization that had survived countless hardships by clinging to traditions and secrets lost to the rest of the galaxy. Leora's small hand tightened around Kalen's, her trust implicit despite the alien faces and strange words. He looked into her violet eyes and made a silent promise to protect her, to uncover the truth behind this village, and perhaps to find his own purpose in this harsh, beautiful world. As the twin suns rose again on the horizon, bathing the village in a warm golden light, Kalen felt the stirrings of destiny. He had crossed the desert and returned a lost child, but now the real journey was only beginning, a journey that would test his courage, his wisdom, and his very soul. Chapter 2. Trials of the Desert Heart. The morning light spilled over the cliffside village like liquid gold, filtering through the tendrils of bioluminescent vines that clung to the ancient stone dwellings. The soft luminescence from the crystals embedded in the walls faded beneath the rising suns, revealing intricate carvings that told stories of heroes and gods long forgotten by the galaxy's wider civilizations. Kalen awoke in a modest chamber carved directly from the rock, the scent of desert herbs and burning incense lingering in the cool air. His muscles ached from the grueling trek through the desert, but a fire burned deep inside him, an unfamiliar, exhilarating mix of fear, anticipation, and purpose. Leora slept beside him on a woven mat of delicate fibers, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm, the violet glow of her skin muted in the dawn. Kalen watched her for a long moment, feeling the weight of the responsibility that had so unexpectedly fallen upon his shoulders. This child was not merely a lost wanderer. She was the living key to a people whose fate now seemed intertwined with his own. The villagers had made it clear his journey with Leora was a test, the first step in a series of trials designed to determine if he was worthy to lead, to unite a fractured people who had weathered countless storms and enemies. But Kalen's own doubts churned beneath his resolve. He was a scavenger, not a leader. How could he possibly meet the expectations of an ancient race whose culture and ways were alien to him in every way? Steeling himself, Kalen rose and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The village was already stirring. Figures clad in flowing robes and garments of woven crystal walked purposefully through narrow passageways carved into the cliff face. Their eyes sharp, reflective, and full of unspoken history tracked Kalen as he moved, some with curiosity, others with quiet reverence. Children darted between the adults, their laughter a fragile thread of joy amidst the heavy mantle of survival that cloaked this hidden community. The architecture blended seamlessly into the cliffs, terraces and platforms cascading down the rock face like a natural fortress. The air was cooler here than in the open desert, tinged with the scent of blooming night flowers and the faint metallic tang of ancient machinery buried deep within the village's heart. A soft voice called Kalen's name. Turning, he saw Soraya approaching, her silver hair glinting in the sun like a river of stars. Her regal bearing was tempered by a gentle kindness that invited trust, yet her eyes held the unwavering focus of a seasoned leader. "It is time," she said quietly. "The council awaits you. The trials begin today." She gestured toward a wide stone stairway carved into the cliff, descending toward the village's central plaza. "Come, Kalen. You must understand our ways if you are to lead." The plaza was a breathtaking amphitheater of stone and crystal, bathed in the soft glow of the rising suns. At its center stood a large monolith inscribed with symbols that shimmered faintly, telling the history of the Zyra people, their rise, exile, and enduring hope for renewal. Around the plaza, elders and warriors gathered, their expressions solemn yet expectant. Kalen's presence caused a ripple of murmurs to course through the crowd, a mix of skepticism and cautious optimism. He felt their gazes pierce him, weighing every movement, every breath, searching for the strength and resolve they sought. Soraya stepped forward to address the assembly, her voice clear and resonant. The arrival of Kalen and the safe return of our lost child, Leora, mark the turning of the wheel. The old ways demand a new guardian, one who can navigate both the harshness of our world and the wider galaxy. The trials you will face are not mere tests of strength, but of wisdom, courage, and heart. Kalen, you will walk paths trod by our ancestors, confront the desert's fury, and learn the secrets our people have guarded for millennia. Only then will you be ready to lead." A hush fell over the plaza as the council elders stepped forward to present the first trial, a challenge both physical and spiritual, designed to prove the candidate's connection to the desert and the people's heritage. Kalen felt the weight of centuries pressing on him, the legacy of a civilization that had survived through cunning, endurance, and unyielding will. The first trial was deceptively simple in its description: to cross the desert heart, a treacherous expanse of sand and stone known for sudden whirlwinds, venomous creatures, and hidden sinkholes. The journey would take days and test not only Kalen's physical endurance, but his ability to attune himself to the desert's subtle signs: the shifting winds, the whisper of the sand, the faint glow of the desert flowers that bloomed only in the moonlight. This was no mere trek. It was a rite of passage, an ancient dance between human and environment, a communion with the very soul of the land. Before departing, Kalen was given a traditional cloak woven from shimmering fibers harvested from desert spiders, light, yet nearly impervious to the piercing sun and sharp sands. A slender dagger of tempered crystal was strapped to his belt, a symbol of protection and honor. Soraya handed him a small, polished stone carved with the spiral symbol of Leora's pendant, a talisman said to guide the wearer through darkness and doubt. As Kalen set off, the villagers gathered at the cliff's edge, their figures silhouetted against the rising suns. Leora ran beside him for a short distance, her laughter like a clear bell ringing through the cool morning air, before she was called back by her kin. He watched her retreating form with a bittersweet pang. She was both his guide and his reason, yet he had to face what lay ahead alone. The desert heart lay before him, an endless sea of golden dunes, punctuated by jagged outcrops and treacherous ravines. The winds howled like ancient spirits, and the sun blazed overhead without mercy. Every step was a battle against exhaustion and disorientation, every breath a struggle against the parching air. Yet Kalen pressed forward, learning to read the desert's secret language: the way the sand shifted before a storm, the patterns of hardened footprints, the fleeting glimmer of rare desert blooms signaling water beneath the surface. At night, the desert transformed. The twin moons rose, casting pale silver light that painted the dunes in ghostly hues. The temperature dropped sharply, and the silence was profound, broken only by distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Kalen found shelter in rocky crevices, the cloak wrapped tightly around him, his mind racing with thoughts of the village, Leora, and the path that destiny had thrust upon him. He traced the spiral talisman with his fingers, feeling a strange warmth emanate from the stone, a silent encouragement. Days passed, and with each dawn, Kalen felt himself changing. The desert was no longer an enemy but a harsh mentor, teaching him patience, resilience, and respect. He began to sense the rhythms beneath the sand, the pulse of life hidden beneath the barren surface. His body grew stronger, his senses sharper. He faced dangers both natural and supernatural: a sudden sandstorm that swallowed the world in a blinding fury, a pack of venomous sandstalkers whose glowing eyes flickered like fire in the night, and the eerie silence that fell before a desert quake. Each ordeal stripped away the doubts and fears that had haunted him, leaving only the core of a man forged by trial and determination. On the seventh day, as Kalen crested a particularly high dune, he beheld a sight that stopped him cold: a circle of towering stone pillars, arranged in a perfect spiral, the very symbol of Leora's pendant and the village's emblem. The desert heart had led him here, to the ancient sanctuary where the elders awaited the conclusion of the trial. The stones hummed with an energy that thrummed through Kalen's veins, a connection to the past that transcended time. At the center of the spiral stood Soraya and the council, their faces lit with quiet approval. They spoke in unison, their voices a harmony that resonated deep within Kalen's soul. "You have walked the desert heart and emerged with your spirit unbroken. You have embraced the desert's truth, learned its secrets, and shown the courage of our ancestors. The first trial is complete." Kalen knelt, breath ragged but triumphant, feeling the weight of their judgment and the burden of his new path. Yet within him stirred a fierce hope that perhaps he was more than a scavenger, more than a stranger in an alien land. Perhaps he was the leader they sought, the bridge between worlds, the beacon for a people waiting in the shadows of the stars. As the sun set once more over the endless dunes, casting the desert in hues of fire and blood, Kalen knew that the trials had only just begun and that the fate of a forgotten people now rested in his hands. Chapter 3. The Trials of Fire and Spirit. The air inside the council chamber was thick with incense and the quiet hum of ancient energies, the walls carved from shimmering stone that pulsed faintly like a living organism. Kalen sat cross-legged before the council elders, the weight of his new reality pressing on him like the desert sun. His body still bore the marks of the first trial, the bruises, the cuts, and the burnished tan from days beneath the twin suns, but it was his mind and spirit that were tested now. The villagers, silent yet watchful, regarded him not as a mere outsider, but as the potential bearer of their future. This was no longer a simple matter of survival. This was a battle for leadership, for unity, and for the soul of a people who had endured millennia of exile and hardship. The elder Soraya's eyes, deep pools of silver wisdom, locked onto his with unwavering intensity. The desert was your first trial, a test of endurance and harmony with the land. But to lead our people, you must master more than survival. You must embrace the fire within the fire of courage, sacrifice, and transformation. Tomorrow, you will face the trial of flames. Kalen's pulse quickened at her words, a mixture of apprehension and determination coursing through him. The trial of flames was legend spoken of in hushed tones by the villagers as a crucible that purified the spirit and revealed the true nature of the chosen. It was said to be a test not just of body but of heart and mind, where the candidate would confront their deepest fears, their darkest memories, and the boundless strength hidden within. The evening stretched long, the village settling into a quiet vigil. Kalen wandered the terraces beneath the stars, his thoughts swirling like the desert winds. The twin moons cast a pale light over the cliffs, and the desert around them whispered ancient secrets. Leora appeared suddenly at his side, her small hand reaching for his. "Kalen," she said softly in her lilting tongue, "the fire is not just outside. It burns inside us all. You must trust it." Her words, simple yet profound, settled his restless spirit. She was more than a child lost in the desert. She was a beacon, a bridge to this mysterious world. As they gazed into the star-studded sky, Kalen felt the heavy burden of expectation lift slightly, replaced by a fragile thread of hope. At dawn, the village assembled at the foot of the towering flame spire, massive crystalline pillar erupting from the desert sands, glowing with an inner fire that seemed alive, shifting colors from molten gold to deep crimson and fierce violet. The trial of flames awaited. Soraya stepped forward, raising her voice so all could hear. "Kalen, to prove your worthiness, you must ascend the flame spire, navigating the corridors of fire and shadow within. The trial will test your fears, your resolve, and your willingness to sacrifice for those you would lead. Only by confronting yourself in the crucible will you emerge ready to carry the mantle of Chieftain." With that, Kalen stepped forward, feeling the scorching heat radiate from the crystalline pillar as he entered the narrow passageway, winding upward inside the flame spire. The walls pulsed with raw energy, and the air shimmered with heat so intense it seemed to melt the very soul. Flames danced along the corridor in living ribbons of light, but they did not burn physically. Rather, they ignited memories, fears, and visions that swirled around Kalen's mind like phantoms. The first vision seized him abruptly, a memory of his childhood, cold and lonely aboard a rusting freighter drifting in the void. The faces of those he had loved and lost flickered in the firelight, their voices whispering regrets and lost chances. He saw himself as a boy, scared and abandoned, yearning for belonging but denied it by the harshness of fate. The flames grew hotter, the whispers louder, but Kalen forced himself to breathe, to stand firm against the burning tide of sorrow. Deeper into the flame spire, the trial shifted. Shadows coalesced into terrifying beasts, manifestations of doubt and fear prowling the corridor, and snarling threats that echoed through the crystal walls. Kalen's heart thundered, but he gripped the hilt of his crystal dagger tightly, reminding himself that these were illusions, trials forged by the ancient magic of the village to break those unworthy. He confronted each shadow with unwavering courage, dispelling the darkness with the light of his resolve. As he ascended, the fire changed once more, revealing visions of the village's history, betrayals, wars, and the sacrifices made by ancestors who had once ruled vast empires, but were forced into exile by enemies both external and within. Kalen saw the pain etched into the land, the fractures among clans, and the desperate hope for unity. He felt the weight of their hopes and fears, and a fierce determination blossomed in his heart to heal the wounds and lead with compassion and strength. At the summit of the flame spire, Kalen faced the final trial, a roaring inferno that demanded total surrender. The flames were a living barrier, impossible to bypass by force. But the trial was not about brute strength, it was about sacrifice. Kalen closed his eyes, and with steady breath, stepped forward into the fire, surrendering to the cleansing blaze. Time seemed to stretch and warp as the flames enveloped him, burning away fear, doubt, and pain, leaving only the core of a man transformed. When he emerged from the fire, the villagers below erupted in quiet applause. Kalen's skin was unmarked, his spirit renewed and stronger than before. The trial of flames was complete, and with it, the first true proof that he could bear the burdens of leadership. But the council was not finished. The next challenge loomed on the horizon, a trial of spirit and wisdom that would test Kalen's understanding of the delicate balance between tradition and change, strength and mercy, duty and freedom. The fate of the village and perhaps the wider galaxy depended on his success. Chapter 4. The Dawn of a Chieftain. The village of Zyra, perched on the jagged cliffs that overlooked the vast, unforgiving desert, awoke slowly beneath the soft glow of dawn's first light. The twin suns had not yet risen fully, but the horizon blazed faintly with promise, casting long shadows across the stone terraces and winding stairways carved centuries ago by hands now lost to time. Kalen stood at the edge of the highest terrace, his eyes tracing the endless sea of golden dunes stretching out into the distance, an ocean of sand and secrets. The air was crisp and still, carrying the scent of desert blooms and the faint metallic resonance that seemed to pulse from the very heart of the cliffs. His journey, which had begun with a chance encounter, a lost child wandering a hostile desert, had transformed into something far greater than mere survival. Now, after enduring the trials of the desert heart and the trial of flames, Kalen found himself poised at the threshold of destiny. The villagers looked to him not as an outsider, but as a beacon of hope, the embodiment of a future where fractured clans might unite and ancient legacies could be reborn. Yet beneath the surface of celebration and cautious optimism, a complex web of challenges awaited. Leadership was not merely about strength or courage. It demanded wisdom, empathy, and an unyielding commitment to the delicate balance between tradition and change. Kalen understood that the greatest test was yet to come, the trial of spirits, a journey inward and outward that would reveal whether he possessed the insight to guide the people of Zyra through an uncertain future. The trial of spirits was unlike the physical ordeals he had faced. It was a communion with the past, present, and future, a spiritual odyssey that required him to confront the echoes of his own soul, the ancestral memories embedded within the village, and the vision of the path ahead. At its core lay the Temple of Whispers, a cavernous sanctuary carved deep into the cliff, where the voices of the ancients could be heard in the stillness, and where truth was revealed not in words, but in visions and understanding. As Kalen descended the spiral steps into the temple's heart, the temperature dropped and the air thickened with a palpable energy. Bioluminescent crystals lined the walls, casting an ethereal glow that danced across intricate murals depicting the history of the Zyra people, their triumphs, betrayals, sacrifices, and hopes. The murals were alive, shifting subtly as if breathing, recounting stories and symbols that transcended language. Inside the temple's chamber, a pool of crystalline water stretched before him, perfectly still and reflecting the soft light. Kalen knelt at the edge and dipped his fingers into the cool liquid, feeling a current that pulsed with the memories of generations. Closing his eyes, he allowed himself to be enveloped by the silence and the whispers that rose from the depths of the temple, voices of those who had come before, guiding and judging in equal measure. The visions began almost immediately, fragments of memories and possibilities flashing like stars in a cosmic dance. He saw the early days of the Zyra civilization, a proud and powerful people who had once ruled vast territories before falling victim to internal strife and external invasion. He witnessed the painful exile into the desert, the forging of new traditions born from hardship, and the unbroken hope for redemption. Within these visions, Kalen confronted shadowed versions of himself, his doubts, fears, and regrets manifesting as spectral forms challenging his claim to leadership. Each shadow tested him, demanding he confront his deepest insecurities, the loneliness of his childhood, the fear of failure, and the burden of responsibility. But he faced them without flinching, drawing strength from the lessons of the desert and the fire, and the trust of Leora and the village. The trial was not only personal, but communal. Kalen saw visions of the villagers, their struggles and aspirations, their need for a leader who could bridge the ancient and the new, who could protect their heritage while embracing change. He glimpsed the political fractures beneath the village's unity-rival clans with grudges centuries old, factions wary of an outsider's rule, and the shadow of a looming threat from a neighboring warlord seeking to claim Zyra's rich mineral deposits. Emerging from the pool, drenched and trembling, Kalen understood the enormity of the task before him. Leadership was a mantle of sacrifice, of balancing fierce tradition with the need for evolution, of inspiring unity without erasing identity. The villagers gathered quietly as he stepped from the temple, their eyes filled with anticipation. Soraya approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have faced the trial of spirits, Kalen. The visions you have seen are the truth of our past and the possibilities of our future. To lead us, you must carry this knowledge with humility and courage." Kalen nodded, his mind a tempest of thoughts and emotions. The final ceremony awaited the anointing of the new chieftain, a ritual steeped in centuries of sacred tradition. The village gathered in the central plaza, a tapestry of colors and light beneath the now fully risen suns. Elders, warriors, and common folk alike watched as Kalen stepped forward, Leora by his side, a symbol of hope, innocence, and renewal. The ceremony began with the chanting of ancient hymns, their tones rising and falling in hypnotic rhythm, echoing off the cliffs like a living heartbeat. Kalen felt the eyes of the ancestors upon him, their silent judgment and blessing intertwined. He knelt before the altar, where a basin of sacred water shimmered with bioluminescent light. Soraya poured the water over his hands, a gesture signifying cleansing and rebirth. Then came the final act, anointing with the sacred oils extracted from the desert's rarest flowers, a symbol of unity between the land and its people. As the fragrant liquid traced the lines of his face and hands, Kalen felt an awakening deep within, a connection to the village, to the desert, and to the legacy he was now charged to uphold. Standing, Kalen raised his eyes to the crowd. "I am honored to stand as your chieftain. Together, we will face the challenges ahead not as divided clans, but as one people. The desert has taught me strength, the flames have forged my spirit, and the whispers of our ancestors guide my path. I pledge to lead with wisdom, courage, and compassion, so that our people may thrive once more." A surge of emotion rippled through the gathering tears, cheers, and the quiet hope of a new dawn. Leora ran forward, placing a hand in his, her violet eyes shining with pride. In that moment, Kalen understood that his journey was not just about survival or leadership, it was about belonging, about forging a future from the fragments of the past. But the story was far from over. Beyond the desert's horizon, shadows stirred forces that would test Kalen's resolve and the unity of the village he now led. The trials that had brought him here were only the beginning of a saga that would shape the fate of an entire world, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The plaza still echoed with the fading cadence of ancient hymns as the villagers dispersed beneath the warming light of the twin suns. Kalen remained standing at the center, the weight of the sacred oils still fresh upon his skin, a tangible reminder of the responsibilities now etched into his very being. Around him, the faces of the people he was chosen to lead reflected a mixture of hope, skepticism, and wary optimism. The chieftain's path was never meant to be an easy one, rather. It was a journey paved with challenges as relentless and shifting as the desert sands themselves. As the sun climbed higher, casting its brilliant light over the cliffside village and the sprawling desert beyond. Kalen felt a stirring in the air, a whisper of change carried on the dry wind. The unity forged in the ceremony was fragile, yet undeniable. But shadows lingered in the folds of the rocky escarpments. Unseen eyes watched from distant vantage points, and in the depths of the desert's relentless heat, old enemies stirred, sensing an opportunity to exploit this moment of transition. The political fractures beneath the village's surface began to reveal themselves more clearly in the days that followed. Among the clans, murmurs of dissent grew, fueled by mistrust of an outsider, this scavenger-turned-chieftain who had walked the trials, but whose true allegiance was still questioned. Some elders clung to the ancient ways, wary of any change that might upset the balance they had maintained through centuries of exile. Others, particularly the younger generation, saw in Kalen a chance for renewal, a bridge to the wider galaxy, and the promise of peace and prosperity beyond the desert's borders. Kalen met with the council daily, navigating the intricate dance of diplomacy, tradition, and innovation. He listened as grievances were aired, old rivalries rekindled, and dreams shared beneath the shade of towering sandstone pillars. With every conversation, he sought to weave together the disparate threads of the village's past into a tapestry that could withstand the storms ahead. His decisions were measured, his voice calm but resolute, earning cautious respect even from his harshest critics. Leora, ever his companion and symbol of the village's enduring spirit, flourished in this new chapter. She moved freely among the clans, her presence a reminder of innocence and hope, her laughter a balm for weary hearts. Under Kalen's guidance, the village began to open its gates. Small exchanges of trade and knowledge were established with nearby settlements, slowly pulling Zyra from its long isolation. Yet Kalen knew the true test would come not from within, but from the outside world. Rumors reached the village of a warlord, an ambitious and ruthless leader from the neighboring territories who coveted the rich mineral veins hidden beneath the desert sands. His forces were said to be growing, his reach extending like a shadow across the lands, threatening to crush all who stood in his way. The fragile peace Kalen had nurtured now faced an existential threat. Determined to protect his people, Kalen gathered the clans beneath the ancient monolith, the same that had borne witness to his first trial. He spoke with the clarity of a man who had faced the desert's wrath, the fire's purging, and the spirit's judgment. We are more than clans divided by history. We are one people, bound by the land and our shared destiny. Together, we will face the storm that approaches, not as fragmented tribes, but as a united force. Our strength lies in unity. The elders and warriors responded with a solemn vow, pledging their loyalty and their arms to the chieftain who had earned their trust through trials of body, mind, and spirit. Kalen set forth plans to fortify the village, train warriors in new tactics blended with ancient combat, and seek alliances beyond the desert, reaching out to distant traders and neighboring leaders who might stand with Zyra against the coming storm. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation and strategy, a forging of bonds old and new. Kalen worked tirelessly, balancing the immediacy of defense with the long-term vision of peace. Leora, growing in confidence and wisdom, became a symbol of the future they fought to secure, a future where the desert's harsh lessons would no longer isolate them, but make them resilient. When the warlord's forces finally arrived, their numbers vast and their intentions brutal, they found not a fractured village but a fortress of unity and resolve. The battles that ensued were fierce, echoing through the canyon walls and swirling desert storms. Kalen fought alongside his people, wielding the crystal dagger with practiced skill, his leadership inspiring courage in even the most hesitant hearts. Through strategy, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit of the Zyra people, the warlord's army was repelled, their ambitions shattered upon the cliffs and sands. The victory was hard-won, leaving scars on the land and its people, but it was a testament to the power of unity forged through trials. Kalen's name became legend, no longer a scavenger lost in the desert, but the chieftain who returned hope to a forgotten people. In the quiet aftermath, as the village healed beneath the twin suns, Kalen stood once more at the edge of the cliffs, Leora beside him. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a harsh teacher, a guardian of secrets, and the eternal witness to their journey. Kalen knew that his path was far from over. The galaxy beyond held mysteries and challenges yet unseen, but with the strength of his people and the wisdom born of fire and spirit, he was ready to face whatever dawn awaited. The lost child had been more than a test. She was the spark that ignited a new era. And Kalen, once a stranger in a foreign land, had become the leader the Zyra people had waited for across the ages.